Back, baby. We talked about Brawl's low tier characters. We talked about the broken top tiers. Today, we're here to cover the rest of the cast. Now, I know this video is technically called the mid tiers. We're actually just gonna go over the leftover high tiers and the mid tiers in this video and the low mid characters. So characters in the beginning are actually going to be a lot better than the technical mid tiers. And then near the end, they might be slightly less good because, you know, there's a couple of those guys still around. But a lot of people consider being a mid tier in Brawl means you're actually very hard to use in tournament. Many of these characters have terrible matchups against the top tiers. Cough, cough. I wonder why. Meta Knights? Being chain grabbed also is a big thing that puts a lot of these characters down, dealing terrible amounts of knockback, bad recoveries, or just all of the above. While some of these characters aren't that terrible as low tiers, some are just, you know, not good enough to really be a top tier. We're gonna be diving in again, we're gonna be going over the leftover high tier characters, going over the large amount of mid tier characters that are in Brawl. So let's do this. Let's dive in. Now, Pikachu was actually good in Brawl, or at least good enough to be the top of high tier. Many people think Pikachu actually had potential to go to be in the top tier. Pikachu is obviously a strong character in this game as they have the ability to chain grab. They can easily do this with their up throw and down throw. They have an incredible projectile and it's really strong in Brawl for its hit stun and knockback. And so that meant Pikachu already was doing really well in Brawl's Campy playstyle and just spam neutral with neutral B. It might sound really bland strategy, just remember this is Brawl, okay? Camping and defensive play is a major part of this game. What really kept Pikachu from being a little bit higher is the character has a smaller player base compared to the other top tiers. But many people predict Pikachu actually could be a bit higher. The interesting thing about ZSS in this game is the character actually has something going for it in this iteration that no other version of ZSS has. Gee, I wonder why. Obviously, it's her armor items. And yes, you're looking at this correctly. Every single match, ZSS spawns with 3 heavy armor items that are left over from Samus's suit. These items aren't just, you know, a cheap item. They hit hard and they instantly give ZSS the advantage at the start of the match. And I feel this is totally appropriate in future Smash games to remove because she was already a character in the game that, you know, was good. Why does she need to spawn with these extra items? So it's really silly in my opinion. Now I'm sure you guys are doing the math. Item tossing exists in Brawl. And this is why people think this is really cheap as only ZSS was a solid enough character to begin with this type of tool and then get to use Brawl's item tossing. And also ironically, ZSS ended up as a very good character in Smash 4. She's strong in a lot of games. She has strong special moves, strong aerials. She's just all around a good character in this game. Now Wario in Brawl is known for having really strong KO tools, aerial mobility that is in a league of its own, many powerful setup tools, his forward throw, down throw, obviously he has his down special that is really strong in this game. At one point people thought Wario was actually the 3rd best character in the game, and obviously Wario would fall off a little bit, but that's because people realized that he was outclassed by many characters that have higher range than him, and yes, that means Meta Knights and Marth, of course, they say hi. Fun fact, Wario's fully charged Waff in this game actually is weaker than the half-charged Waff, which makes no sense. It's actually more beneficial to not wait for the full charge in this game. So that's why it's called half-charged Waft, and people use it a lot in the Wario community. It was the strongest version of this move in the game, and it's kind of ironic, but whatever, it's Brawl, nothing makes sense, all right? We trip in this game, okay? It's silly time. His down B helped his recovery. He had a side special that was also a ridiculous recovery tool. His up air, up smash were all strong KO tools. However, Wario does have a grab release problem, and this is sort of one of the big flaws that the character had that held him down. You know, he can get cheesed out of his grab release. Makes him vulnerable for easy follow-ups, and honestly, if Wario didn't have this problem, honestly, I could see him being a top tier, but it's Brawl, baby. It is what it is. Another character who, in my opinion, is a prelude for what the character is going to become in the future Smash game, that's Lucario. Now, while Aura is definitely not as strong as, you know, it is in Smash 4 compared to its peak in that game, for those living under a rock, Aura in this game increases the more Lucario is damaged. So essentially, Smash 4 is rage before rage. And Lucario possesses one of the strongest aerial games when his Aura is fully charged. Crazy amounts of aerial mobility, already really solid. Lucario has really strong range. His combo ability is also much better when he has full aura. His follow-ups are easier. His rolls also go really far in this game, so that's a plus. However, the problems lie with how good Lucario is when he doesn't have aura. He tends to be really reliant on building up aura in this game because he obviously becomes a much better character, but unfortunately, base Lucario doesn't have the same positives as Lucario with aura. Also, there's problems with Lucario's survivability. When he gains aura, he obviously has to get closer to dying too and gaining percent. So holding the high amounts of aura is usually his game plan. His recovery is also something he has to be wary of because obviously characters can edgeguard him pretty easily because, you know, his moves have some vulnerability. Now I'm sure some of you are looking at the tier list and saying, what? King DDD is a high tier in this game? What's going on here? He's sort of one of the only times in Smash where the big heavyweight character is actually kind of good. Now some of you might be saying, oh, honest content, he's only a high tier, how good can he be? He's a heavyweight. Heavyweights don't normally end up as top 12 in the game, especially in Brawl's bigger roster. This is big fat DDD we're talking about, and this is the best version of the character by far, because he's going to, you know, become a low tier obviously in future games. But DDD does have some things that complement him in Brawl's meta, and that's cheese. Now DDD is one of the best characters at chain grabbing in this game with his down throw, and he also has really fast moves despite him being a heavyweight. It makes no sense. These moves can also, you know, KO, like his up tilt. More importantly, he has the longest non-tether grab in the game, which means he's essentially melee Marth. 2/3 of the cast are gonna be chain grab fodder to him. And because his down throw has set knockback, it means it does the same knockback no matter what percent. Like normally when you have a throw, it becomes harder to do follow-ups out of it, but DDD's, it has a set knockback no matter what, so you have consistent follow-ups. He also can take advantage of hit stun canceling. He has a good recovery. His up special has armor on it, which is silly. His KO power was really strong. He's a heavyweight. He had the cheesiest back air probably in the game, and it's actually considered one of the best attacks in Brawl to some people because of how strong it is off stage at gimping and also on stage. You could spam multiple back airs in one short hop, and this move can even KO. It actually lasts for extremely long period of time hitbox wise, and you can camp with it. Also, he has Waddle Dees in this game, and this kind of helped him deal with camping. Also, he could deal with combos for him. The move lasted for an extremely long time, and he could camp with his Waddle Dees. His only weaknesses was him dealing with campers and being combo food because of his larger character model, and obviously him being weak against the best characters in the game, Meta Knight and Ice Climbers. Now I'm sure some of you can guess why Toon Link was good in Brawl. A character with multiple projectiles, high aerial mobility, so that meant Toon Link was actually a good camper in this game. And he had two strong combo starters being his up tilt and back air, while all of his aerials being strong zoning tools, and his Z air dealt a lot of damage. However, sort of like Young Link in Melee, Toon Link's KO power is a limiting factor for the character in this game. If anything, Toon Link has a very laggy grab, predictable moves, short amounts of reach, and he also does have possible KO tools like his up smash and forward smash, and down air is sort of like a dive kick, and his down smash can send opponents at a semi-spike angle, which is neat. This is not a terrible version of Toon Link, but he is lacking in the KO department, which sort of holds him back a little bit. Now Wolf is actually not a bad character in this game. Many people actually think he is the second best spacey in the game. Wolf's strengths are his really strong spammable projectile moves with a lot of range, like back air, where the move's range is actually insane in this game, and his airspeed is among one of the best. He's great at transitioning on the ground to the air because of his low landing lag on his moves, and that can even be auto-canceled out of short hop. He has a down throw, which is also really good. He has a frame 1 shine with intangibility that is obviously a reflector too. He does have some flaws considering that he is a spacey. He falls like a rock off stage. He has to deal with chain grabbing. He can be gimped off stage rather easily, and in fact, there's plenty of meteor smashes in Brawl that kill Wolf at really early percents. If an opponent gets a strong meteor smash on Wolf, it is really hard for him to meteor cancel to survive. And this can also be because Wolf's recovery is really difficult for him to snap to ledge on. The fast fall speed is definitely a limiting factor defensively. Now Fox, who is a similar archetype to Wolf, interestingly enough, this is the one and only time where Fox is the worst spacey in the game, especially compared to Falco and Wolf. Now Fox is not terrible, I wouldn't say he is unviable, but they just toned down many aspects of the character, especially compared to the Melee version, which was the previous best character in the game. This is also the worst placement for Fox in the whole series, but him being a mid-tier, I mean, it could be a lot worse. There's other low tiers that used to be high tiers, they got nerfed really hard. Similar to Wolf, his recovery can be a problem at times, and it's because of his fast fall speed. I wouldn't say Fox's recovery is worse than Wolf's, but they do have similar problems when it comes to dealing with edge guarding and being combo food. In fact, being combo food is the big problem for Fox because chain grabs are even a bigger deal in Brawl's meta, which is a negative for him, even in Melee, and it's sort of a negative in Brawl as well. As more characters have chain grabs like Sheik, Pikachu, DDD, Ice Climbers, you get it. They can chain grab him, and in fact, some characters like Pikachu can chain grab him from 0 all the way to death. He's a bit more reliant on up smash to kill in this game, which, you know, his KO options are a little bit more predictable, especially compared to the Melee version. His shine and his grabs are definitely toned down. Up throw, up air, chain grabs, and killing off of them anymore. He still has a strong up smash. Many things are improved, like his forward air and down air beat, but losing his up throw and up air confirmed because of the increased lag on his shine, despite him no longer being able to jump cancel, but the move has less end lag in this game. So there is some positives and negatives here, but he does lose a lot of that melee tech that he previously had. Game & Watch benefited a lot from Brawl's engine changes. Now this game became more floaty and slow paced, and it actually served Game & Watch pretty well because it made him lean into his more defensive traits, and he kind of needed to. His survivability is already not that good, but he was given some things in this game that did help him. He has long-lasting disjointed attacks. Some of them are actually quite powerful, especially in this game where Game & Watch can KO under 100%, and he has some amazing survivability tools in this game like bucket breaking, and momentum canceling also benefiting him. Despite him being a lightweight, he can actually use this to help him live much longer. And his speed and mobility have been increased. His attacks have been made stronger, especially his aerials and tilts. Down throw, you can tech chase with it, but he does have some obvious flaws like his lightweight, and you can't really bucket break if you want to survive vertically. His laggy attacks, despite them coming off fast, they have a lot of end lag. And while some of the moves have good reach, like his grab and his throws, they're pretty mediocre outside of, you know, his down throw, and not all of his attacks fall under this camp. He was actually considered a top tier when the game first came out, which is kind of crazy. It makes you feel like Smash Ultimate, but no. But he actually has one of the largest fall-offs in Brawl, and this is mainly because people figured out that he wasn't as good, especially defensively without bucket breaking, of course. He's certainly viable enough in the meta, he just struggles against many of the high-tiered characters that are in this game. Pit has one of the best projectiles in the game. It's chargeable, it is fast, it has range to go across the stage, and there's control on where Pit can aim, so this makes this projectile insanely good for camp. And Pit also has one of the best recoveries in the game, which is his multiple jumps, his up special, a glide. Pit also has extremely fast attacks throughout his entire moveset. He has 2 reflectors, being his down special and we don't talk about that move. And also his smash attacks and aerials and grabs are pretty good, but what's the big deal? I'm sure you're asking yourself. Pit sounds very similar to even MonteRicard. Well, MonteRicard is the best character in the game, but why is Pit falling short if he has some similarities to MonteRicard? Where does Pit really fall off? Well, actually, it's his KO power. His KO power is actually not really good at all, and he has short range attacks that can limit his ability to try to end stocks. He does have some cool things going for him, like wing dashing. He's mostly reliant on his forward smash and back air, especially if he wants to get the kill. And you might be asking yourself, how does a character who basically has a sword in a way, why does he just struggle with range? I don't know. Don't ask me, I didn't develop Brawl. I'd be asking the same question. He also has some weird little quirks, like if you hit him out of up special, he just dies. And unless he touches the ground, he's not coming back. In fact, he's the only character in the game who has this weakness, which, yeah, I don't know. Now, R.O.B has plenty of things going for him, like his projectiles, being neutral B and down special, and neutral special is actually transcendent. It will go through projectiles it connects with, and he has one of the best recoveries in the game, as R.O.B can actually act out of his recovery. He has great tilts, aerials with large amounts of range. Similar to Pit, his main problem is his ability. KO is not not really that good. He can sometimes have trouble killing at 150%. Many of his moves' knockback scaling is just not high enough, and many of R.O.B's attacks are just slow and they have too much startup. He's a heavyweight character too, so that means he's just going to be easy to juggle. He has trouble dealing with camping because he's a little bit larger, and especially with an opponent that can definitely deal with his projectiles, like, reflecting them. Similar to Game&Watch, R.O.B was actually seen as a top tier character, and he would fall off to being a mid tier due to players figuring out his weaknesses, and obviously the meta being more reliant on chain grabbing and defensive play, which R.O.B had a clear blind spot with when it came to dealing with that. Previously being a higher tiered character in Melee, Brawl Peach is technically one of the worst placements for the character. They toned down many aspects of Peach's defensive play from Melee. Her reach is actually pretty limited. Her turnip covers a shorter amount of distance as far as range goes. She has slow momentum. She gets camped by other characters who are faster than her. Her grounded attacks are a lot weaker, and she has an air dodge 30 frames of lag. Despite this, she does have decent matchups against characters like the Ice Climbers because of her ability to separate them effectively. This was even the case in Melee, ironically. And her recovery was drastically buffed, actually. She actually has one of the best recoveries in the game horizontally, and she's good at racking up damage and comboing despite her having many struggles, like, trying to get a KO in this game. All of her aerials have much less landing lag. She is slightly faster in Brawl, but she does lose some of the iconic Melee aspects, like her down smash being toned down to 4 hits, and it does less damage instead of being 5 hits like, it was in Melee. Compared to the Melee version of Kirby, Brawl Kirby is a massive improvement. Being a mid-tier in this game, and his combo potential and grab game and setups have been massively improved. Even having cool things like, a kill throw, a safer recovery. His range is a major step forward, especially with his back hit. And forward smash is actually pretty decent too. He's still a lightweight character with slow speed, but Kirby is also more reliant on his KO tools. His aerials are not on the same level as his back air. He has some decent stuff going for him in this game, and Kirby was actually initially seen as a high tier when the game first came out, but then over time the character just wasn't seen as strong defensively and struggled with dealing with camping. Despite Kirby being kind of bad in this game, this is definitely what the Melee version should have been and probably should have leaned more towards, especially with having, usable grabs and better KO options, but it is what it is. Donkey Kong was slightly improved compared to the Melee version. His mobility is actually good for being a heavyweight, and he has a strong back air in this game, so he can, do his thing, spam back air. His tilts are even better in this game across the board, and in fact he's been buffed by Brawl's momentum canceling, which benefits his already strong horizontal recovery. His combo game and ability to juggle with his grabs is also still an apparent part of this character, and some obvious flaws for Donkey Kong is being chain grabbed by another fellow heavyweight character, being DDD, and even his high amounts of lag still on plenty of his moves, meaning he can easily be punished when his moves miss, and it's still a vulnerability for the character, and being poked through his shield just like in Melee. Even dealing camping, his spot dodge is incredibly slow, one of the worst ones in the game. Early on he was actually considered to be a high tier, but it was pretty apparent that there were some better heavyweights in the game like Snake and King Dedede, leading to him be sort of outclassed by them later on. Now Sonic did not have a good start in Brawl. Ironically, this version of the character is really the opposite of what the character is going to become in future Smash games. Although another ironic layer to this version of the character, his camping playstyle that is more well known in Smash 4 and Ultimate actually existed in Brawl. Now Sonic is actually the fastest character in the game by a large margin, which actually gives him a huge niche in a lot of matchups where the characters are really slow. However, Sonic really struggles with building damage and KOing, which again is an ironic part of how he changed in future Smash games. This version of the character was always seen as just non-viable, and it's really just because how bad his KO power is in this game. However, as time would pass, his defensive game would actually lean towards, him running around and camping, and this became a big part of his character, was running the clock and timing out the opponent. This actually developed Sonic's meta in a way, as he was one of the best characters at doing this. And this alone was Sonic's rise from being a low tier to a mid tier character, which again is the same style of play that would actually lead to him being a top tier in Ultimate. But that's despite the point. The reason why this version of the character is so bad, it's basically because Sonic was forced to camp and run away with his side special and down special. And because his damage output and knockback is so bad, it's almost not even worth overextending yourself with Sonic because it can lead to him being put at risk. As you can guess, Ike is actually the quintessential slow but hard-hitting character, having plenty of reach, a transcendent property, strong endurance, and because of momentum canceling and being heavy that led to him living for a decent amount of time, his moves have plenty of range to them, and that does give him a lot of edge in this meta, especially when it comes to edge guarding or beating missed attacks. He has an extremely good jab also. This was a strong combo tool for the character, and it was his main use jab canceling to lead to his stronger KO tools like his up tilt or back air, for example. He does have laggy smash attacks, they are really powerful, and in fact early on people thought that Ike was actually really good. But then sort of a Little Mac syndrome developed for the character and people realized, oh, he has really laggy moves, I mean you can just take advantage of him easily. Ike's attacks are also slow, they're just as slow as Ganondorf, so how bad is it for him? Well, the meta just began to develop against him. People would eventually realize that he was not really that good if you just stay out of his range, try not to get hit by that jab. Also, his recovery is definitely gimpable. Both of his side special and up special are easy to catch. Up special is actually an incredibly linear move, and this is actually exacerbated by his low double jump and his fast fall speed. He also doesn't have the best mobility. He gets beat by camping, and I cannot camp at all. In Brawl, Sheik was a victim of Brawl's infamous nerfing of most of the melee top tiers, unless you're, Falco, Marth, or Ice Climbers. And Sheik is one of the characters actually being the worst version of the character in Brawl. This is the low point for the character in Smash, and she's still good enough to be a mid-tier, but plenty of her KO power from melee has been heavily toned down, making it difficult for Sheik to even KO under 150. Her forward air, that was her most well-known tool for finishing combos in melee, is no longer really going to be doing that as easily. And holy cow did this move get nerfed. It just has no KO power to it. And Sheik is also not really good at surviving hits due to her being light, and which means Sheik is not really strong defensively. Her fast fall speed makes her susceptible to being juggled and chain grabbed. Although despite all the nerfs, she is still a combo machine in this game. Her needles are actually a strong projectile. Her forward tilt is a combo starter even in this game, and you can tell they were starting to push the character a little bit more in a direction that the character would actually develop towards in Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate especially. We don't want to talk about the early updates of Smash 4 Sheik, I guess it doesn't apply to that. But she still has the chain in this game and is actually used as a recovery tool, which is kind of strange, but it's there. And she can transform into Zelda 2, which is going to be completely removed in Smash 4. In fact, people actually think Zelda is a better foil for Sheik in this game because Sheik actually struggles to KO this time around. But Zelda is still an awful character too, so take that for what it is. Ness is pretty okay, honest content pun. This character is essentially going to deal with plenty of flaws that many other characters are not going to deal with, and that's the grab release problem. It makes many characters chain grab food in multiple matchups, and yes, while Ness does have some cool things going for the character, his aerials are powerful, his PK Fire, which is a decent tool, PK Thunder can KO early, and although similar to other versions of Ness, he has a strong back air. Ness has terrible range, his recovery is easier said than done. Although it is better in this game, it's definitely a step forward from the melee version that had no range and it was just easy to edgeguard with. His approach options on the ground are definitely pretty bad. This was kind of similar to the melee version. They aren't really doing him too many favors, but the main issue with the Brawl version of Ness is being grab release bait, and that is the major downfall to his moveset in this game. It is for sure holding him back. Yoshi has strong movement speed, and their airspeed is actually the fastest in the game, and they have a grab release that works on multiple characters, a chain grab, a strong KO tool, tools like up smash, forward air, and they even have one of the best pivot grabs in the game. His jab is a strong tool for breaking out of pressure, and his up special can actually stop approaches in the air. Many versions of Yoshi, his shield has been pretty weird, but he's not able to jump out of shield. The shield drop animation lasts for a really long time. He can't power shield, there's no glide tossing. His defensive game is really bad, having some terrible rolls. His standing grab is also easy to punish due to the amount of lag on it. He lacks the ability to punish, especially out of shield, making this one of the worst shields in Smash history. Yes, his airspeed is great, but they offset this by giving him a pretty terrible up special, at least recovery-wise. And he actually doesn't have good KO power outside of a few moves that I mentioned earlier. Early on, people actually thought Yoshi was one of the worst characters in the game. Their shield was terrible, their KO power was definitely holding them back. But Yoshi did go up from being a low tier to at least being a little bit better. To the brave people that decided to main Yoshi and actually place decently enough in tournaments to make Yoshi basically a mid tier. Some people think Yoshi is really bad in this game, some people think the character is underrated. It kind of is ironic because almost every version of Yoshi is, although the Brawl version is probably one of the worst versions of the character, but you know, that's besides the point. Luigi in this game was toned down heavily from the Melee version, still having strong finishers, most importantly his up special and forward smash. His downsides are his slow dash, his terrible airspeed. He gets pushed back because of his traction, limits his out of shield options, and his inability to deal with camping is definitely limiting the character. And also the removal of wave dashing, hit stun canceling makes it easier for him to live, yes, but they just didn't really give him that many things to really buff the character outside of the nerfs. A slightly better recovery. He honestly feels more floaty in this game, and I mean, duh, it is Brawl. He already is a really floaty character in previous Smash games, and he's even more floaty, and this is a bigger flaw for Luigi this time around, as it hurts his ability to punish an already floaty character with crazy traction doubling down on these things. He does really bad against characters who outrange him, like Marth, Meta Knight, for example. And to be honest, he doesn't have a high amount of tournament placements, so I think Luigi is just heavily nerfed all around, especially compared to the Melee version. Pokemon Trainer is actually not that bad on paper. There's multiple characters put into one. This has never really been done in Smash at the time, and in theory this actually could make Pokemon Trainer into a very adaptable character that could change on the fly, kind of like a stance character in a way. However, this is one of the many things holding back Pokemon Trainer. The stamina mechanic was introduced in Brawl, which made Pokemon Trainer weaker the longer that they were in a match. They essentially had to switch Pokemon constantly in order to adapt to the stamina mechanic weighing the Pokemon down, which really limits the amount of time that you can use them. Because if you use a Pokemon too long, they will just deal significantly less knockback and damage. And they even have another mechanic that has been definitely plagued at least some of the Pokemon in Pokemon Trainer's kit. Some of them benefit from it, some of them get hurt by it. The type weaknesses are actually a part of Pokemon Trainer in this game. So yes, that means Ivysaur is weak to fire type moves, the most common moves that you'll see in the game, and Charizard is actually weak to the small number of water type moves. Squirtle is weak to grass, but to be honest, it didn't really affect their viability except make Ivysaur even worse. Squirtle is actually good enough to be a high tier character in some people's opinions. The type effectiveness mechanic even subtly buffed Squirtle as it made him deal less knockback to the fire type moves, and Charizard in a sense was not a bad mon and was most likely seen as a solid mid-tier heavyweight character, while Ivysaur is seen as one of the worst characters in the game with their terrible amounts of airspeed, weak moves, poor survivability, and I made a whole video talking about why Ivysaur is really bad in this game. Squirtle was actually not a bad character in Brawl and would have been at least a high tier if the character was solo. Charizard was at least seen as a mid-tier, and Ivysaur was definitely seen as a low-tier character. Some people's eyes, one of the worst characters in the game. Lucas is a rather strange character in this game, having an average amount of speed and mobility, the strongest smash attacks in all of Brawl, powerful throws that can even KO. His PK Fire was a strong zoning tool. However, his aerials are pretty lackluster, and even his Z-Air is not really that good. His moves are incredibly laggy, and this sort of plays into the high risk, high reward aspect of Lucas. Like, he has these really strong, beefy smash attacks, but they're really difficult to use because of their lag. And similar to Ness, Lucas has a large amount of grab release lag, and this is really holding the character back. And to be real, if Lucas and Ness didn't have this issue, they probably would be a lot better in my opinion. Lucas actually has a lot of cool tech in this game. This is definitely an interesting version of Lucas due to his interesting physics. He has zap jumping, wave bouncing, magnet pull. It's just a shame that he's held down by his many flaws. Thank you guys for watching the video. There is a Patreon down below if you guys want to get videos early. You can support the channel down below. Make sure to like, subscribe. Check out Zach on his Sapphire. Take care. Peace.